Good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Matusiewicz. I'm the former finance director and treasurer for the City of Newport Beach. I have more than 30 years of experience in municipal finance, accounting, and treasury. Today we're going to jump in and talk about the day-to-day investment of public funds, and we'll jump right into it. So the presentation today will cover the elements of a comprehensive investment program. We'll talk about some fiduciary considerations, some tactical approaches to accomplish your goals, and then we'll end with some takeaways. So I think most people assume that an investment program is simply building a portfolio, but there's really more to managing an agency's investments than simply building a portfolio. As a fiduciary to your agency, this slide illustrates the other elements or factors that should be considered when constructing a comprehensive investment program. So you'll want to construct a framework of safety by carefully reviewing your investment policy, selecting an appropriate benchmark for your portfolios, implementing a disciplined risk management process, monitoring your portfolio for compliance, providing transparency of the program through comprehensive reporting and out to your public officials. Of course, cash flow projections ensure that you have sufficient liquidity to manage your cash flow needs. So your investment decision process may look a little bit like this, where you've got the legislative body that we all agree on a clear and comprehensive investment policy that has been adopted by your legislative body, and the policy itself, as well as the knowledge of your agency's risk profile, will help you determine what the appropriate level of risk your agency is willing to take on, which will also drive, the potential rate of return. And of course, you need to consider the liquidity that your agency needs in order to come up with a strategy. You need to consider the kind of economic and market conditions, as I said, your cash flow requirements, and then adjusting today to some of the market environment. And all of these things together lead to a disciplined investment process. So, some of the things I hear from my colleagues throughout the state, are some of those arguments. I think we all struggle, especially if you're wearing a finance director hat as well, that, gosh, I don't have enough staff. My cash flow needs are uncertain. Our portfolio is too small. I can't afford an investment advisor, and all too often those resulting decisions end up leaving excess amounts in your demand deposit accounts. Perhaps you only participate in into a local government investment pool. But I think no matter how small your portfolio is, having a comprehensive investment policy still matters. Otherwise, if you're too conservative, you're sacrificing some market rate of return, or you're taking on additional risk by not considering, the other elements of a comprehensive investment program. So, one of the things that are premises we always talk about is safety, liquidity, and yield. And I think it's natural for finance directors to focus on the safety of principal as the primary driving factor, and it should be. But as fiduciaries, we can't ignore the third objective is understanding our agency's risk parameters to earn. I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to achieve a return commensurate with our agency's level of risk that they're willing to take on. So the part of the code talks about local, our fiduciary responsibilities are really to meet the prudent investor standard. And we are fiduciaries, we are trustees that shall act with care, skill, prudence, and diligence under the circumstances that that are relevant to our agency. And that includes being in tune with the economic conditions, the anticipated needs of our agency, and this concept that you should be responsible for making prudent decisions of somebody in a like capacity would act and conduct themselves in the same like character and manner to safeguard the principles and main liquidity needs of your agency. And that doesn't mean abdicating the need to earn a market rate of return. So we should consider all three factors as well as the comprehensive investment program as part of our fiduciary duties. So a small agency approach, what I see a lot is often small agencies may not or may work directly with a broker dealer who, remember, is not your fiduciary, and they will work direct and may also work without your investment advisor who is a fiduciary. But the key here is to remember that since broker dealers do not have a fiduciary responsibility to act in your agency's best interest, it is a good practice to obtain competing quotes. And so small agencies, sometimes it's that we may err on the side of having way too much in the demand deposit accounts because we're concerned about liquidity. You may overly rely on money market accounts or even the local government investment pool. But that small agency may also participate in laddering out the direct purchase of insured CDs or use a placement a CD service like CDARS and others. And maybe those same small agencies might be also buying US Treasuries and maybe agencies as well, but less so would we see them take on instruments that may have some credit risk associated with them. So, I think there is a good case to be made for whether you're a small or medium-sized agency to consider an investment advisor. As finance directors, we're stretched thin, so we're I like to say that finance departments sometimes are barely regarded as a necessary evil in their organization. So it's quite often that we're we lack the adequate staffing to be finance directors and treasurers at the same time. We may be pulled in multiple directions, so may not have that in-depth training necessary to fulfill the technical requirements needed to be investing the city's portfolio. If staffing is an issue, then quite likely you may experience issues even having the resources, lacking the market information to systems such as Bloomberg to stay on top of the market. And so I think there's really an economy of scale and believe it or not, savings by hiring an investment advisor so that you are more fully meeting that fiduciary responsibility to provide that comprehensive investment program. Remember that investment advisory firms, because they have the economies of scale, they have a full team of trained professionals. They are likely to have compliance officers, a credit committee. You've got the added credibility of telling your electeds that you have outside investment advisor, and they're more likely to have redundancies in their investment program. And they'll also have increased access to broker offerings, again, because they're investing at scale. And so I do think there's a cost savings to agencies. It may also come in the form of better investment performance if you can't spend enough of your day focusing on your portfolio. And that staff savings time too, so you can redeploy those same staff members to do other needed tasks in your agency. So, then the next thing we've talked about, some of the agencies say, well, my investment portfolio isn't large enough to warrant an investment advisor. But I think that that changes over time. And I think the last time I surveyed investment advisors, I think some of the responses were as you could have a portfolio as low as $10 million and it could still be cost effective. And so the range of fees are, it's usually tiered based on assets under management, and it's between 5 and 12 basis points. With maybe an annual fee, minimum fee of $10,000 to $12,000 a year. So depending on the size of your agency, especially if you're a small agency, I wouldn't right away rule out that you're too small for an investment advisor, and should test the market periodically. And I think even just calling some of the big names that are out there and seeing if they're willing to service your portfolio no matter your size. So I like to think of not just one portfolio, but several portfolios, and I really kind of describe them as liquidity buckets. But I think the reason to separate and create maybe multiple portfolios might be the investment objectives of that particular portfolio. So you might have a liquidity component to meet the needs of your agencies or specific expenditures that may be coming due. So and usually these are invested with a different duration and risk. So your performance, if you have a blended portfolio, it may not be fair to blend your liquidity component with your longer term component and still be able to get a credible benchmark comparison. So the other reason is, if it is truly for reserve or long-term components, you might want to segment your portfolio between liquidity. You might have short-term and long-term, and depending on your investment horizon, you may be able to tolerate greater volatility in some of your other portfolios. And we'll talk a little bit about that, some tactical strategies later on. So we all know that cash flows are important. I know they're covered in a different topic, but quite often public agencies will have seasonal cash flows. If you're a city, your cash flows may, or in this case, it's more of a property tax city. So you will have some longer or some spikes in when you're flush with cash, and then some areas, July, August, September, October, where you might be cash starved. But that might change drastically by your revenue source, the major revenue sources for your agency. But I usually start with a high-level version of your cash flows, just so you can look at the seasonality trends. We use a 3-year rolling average. And then that will be very different from your day-to-day cash needs. And this is just an example, but how our office had managed, we had specific individuals or folks that were responsible for reporting the sources of the outflows, and it would be somebody's job to look at the outstanding balance, see what's cleared, start gathering some of the other information to come up with what you need to either invest or move out of your demand deposit account. Our goal was always to keep, something less than $2 million in our demand deposit account, unless your bank is perhaps offering a high compensating balance credit. Might be a consideration, but typically this is this sort of analysis is what driving where we're going to send out to invest, and how much we want to keep in our checking account for cash needs. So this is one of the kind of tactical approaches. You may, so we kind of have an overlay of, we have a reporting tool that you can use. There are a number of competitors out there. We know that it's Clearwater and Simpro and Tracker, and there's likely more that I may not even be familiar with. You may have 1 or 2 investment advisors or none at all, but I think most modern investment software systems connect directly to your custody bank, and they will, if you are using an investment advisor, the software is compiling the buys, the sells, and essentially automating the accounting for you, without having to replicate the buys and sells by going and replicating the transaction like it used to be, where if you wanted to use the software, you had to go and put in every trade, and even if you used an investment advisor or 2. And then the other thing that's nice about these tools is they can offer, they can consolidate. If you do have multiple advisors, or perhaps multiple portfolios, to consolidate and even compare the different objectives of your portfolios against a relevant benchmark. And so I would advocate, if you're either in the market for shopping for a custody bank or if you already have one, it's not totally necessary, but it helps when your different kind of liquidity buckets, you have separate custody accounts within your custody bank, so you can segregate if you've got an intermediate or longer term strategy, that you have a separate account with your custody bank that contains those investments. And then you might have a 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 year portfolio for either your reserves or your core portfolio, and then you have a number of liquidity options. Now, of course, these aren't in your custody bank always, but there are that. I think that is changing now too. You can have maybe it's not part of your custody bank, but you can certainly have these other portfolios report up to your investment accounting system, whether it's a local government investment portfolio, or maybe it's a, we call it our targeted maturities portfolio, but these would be to meet specific cash needs. And all of these might have different benchmarks. And so having that accounting system, you can aggregate, disaggregate, look at the performance at individual portfolio. And again, I would look at your portfolio. It's not just one portfolio, but a series of liquidity buckets with clear goals of what each liquidity bucket is trying to achieve. So with this model, probably less than one full-time equivalent position was assigned to our treasury operation under this model. So it was part of an accountant, part of my time, part of more of a clerical position that worked on those day-to-day cash flow projections. But if you have an investment advisor, there could be significant staff savings under this model. Or if you choose to do it yourself, you may not have that same savings, but you still may deploy a strategy such as this under different liquidity buckets. So for me, the key takeaways on day-to-day investment of public funds is to remember that you are a fiduciary to your agency, and that requires a comprehensive investment portfolio. It's not something that should be taken lightly to say, well, we just kind of shoot from the hip. So you should have a well-written and comprehensive investment portfolio. You could send it to CMTA or APT to have them certify your policy. You should go through a regular investment review of your portfolio, and it should all lead to a disciplined investment process. Of course, don't forget the cash flow monitoring, compliance reporting, monitoring, and then the transparency of reporting up to your board, so they clearly understand or agree to what the objectives are, and then how are you doing relative to staying within those confines as articulated by your investment policy statement. Risk management is, so it's not invest in, well, we'll see you later, see you when that bond matures. You should have an active program that is monitoring. I think most people think about credit risk, but really the interest rate risk that often sometimes called market risk, and your liquidity are probably your two biggest risks. You don't want to lock up and your liquidity and find yourself in a cash flow crunch. you also don't want to chase yield by just extending the duration of your portfolio. That's where you are in a fixed income investment environment. Duration is probably the biggest risk we face. So understanding your investment horizons and the market risk that you are taking on, and as measured by duration as the amount of risk you're taking on in your portfolio. But if you are an agency that also buys corporates, somebody should be monitoring. You should either have a credit committee that is monitoring the credit risk. And depending on the call features and how you're investing in the current market, you may have some investment risk, but there's a fair amount of risk management that goes along. Diversification is great. I mean, we should all strive for that, but it's not just limited to diversification. You should be actively monitoring, both credit, your liquidity needs, and the duration of your portfolio relative to the market, all leading to more of a disciplined investment approach. So you're not just reacting to events that are happening today. So you really want a disciplined investment process. You do want to measure against benchmarks, so you can tell your agency, well, for each of these liquidity buckets, this was our stated goal, that you should set out in advance, establishing that benchmark, and then measuring yourself against that benchmark. And then the miscellaneous things, of course, I'm a big proponent of using analysis tools that are at your disposal. So having a good accounting software program for your investment is helpful, both in managing and asking good questions of your investment advisor, but also goes a long way in saving time in fulfilling your reporting objectives. If you report out to your governing board, either monthly or quarterly, you have the tools to do so and provide provide the board that's doing the oversight, providing them with some rich information, and not just saying, hey, this is how much in total we have. Hopefully you're providing them rich information. The investment certification programs for training, there's both a training certificate program through CMTA and APT, but there's also the investment policy certification programs that you could submit your policies for review. And then cash flow forecasts. It's imperative to a comprehensive investment program. And remembering that by being too conservative and just saying, well, safety is my primary focus, I'm going to leave everything in a DDA. Remember, you're leaving money on the table, and I might argue that perhaps you're not fulfilling your fiduciary responsibility of earning a market rate of return relative to your agency's risk profile. So hopefully you found this insightful and a good follow-up to the previous session. And we hope that you will join us for the next session, which is on benchmarking. So with that, I'll say thank you, and I hope you found this webinar helpful.